All right, if we're ready to call
I
the
think I must have my
meeting to
volume
order
off.
of the January 12th Human Services Committee, if we could call roll.
Lewis. Allen. Lewis. I see you. I'm gonna mark you in. Allen. Bates.
Here.
Davis. Iqbal.
Iqbal present.
Kenyon.
Here.
Pirog. Shepro. Sturgis.
Anita, can you hear us? You're muted. Unmute.
She was
Okay.
talking a minute ago.
Yes,
There you go.
now I'm
All right,
unmuted and now I actually have my speaker on too. I'm all ready. I'm gonna just drink some more coffee. I'll be good.
You are the best. All right, we have a quorum. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of November 10th and December 15th? So moved, Kenyon. Bates seconds. Any conversation there? You need roll call on that?
Allen. Bates.
Yes.
Davis. Iqbal.
Iqbal, yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes,
Sturgis, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone online for public comment? I see nobody in the room this morning. Blair, you have anybody for public comment? Okay. Monthly financial reports are on file. Did anybody review and have any question on those?
No.
The Veterans Assistant Commission, Jake, I'm going to ask for an on file unless you have any abnormalities or out of tolerance.
That's perfectly fine with me. I'd be happy to take any questions on the written report as submitted.
Okay, and Jake, I do apologize. I'm trying to be as conscientious as I can for the committee behind us. We have a full load, but this is the second month in a row I've asked you to abbreviate, and I'll make sure we get you in next month. Thank you. Any questions for Jake? Jamie, come to the stand and podium, and congratulations. Is this your first report as the official executive director?
This is my first
Congratulations,
report
Debbie.
official.
There we go. Yes, we'll do that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we are expecting such a different, vivacious report, but we're going to ask you the same thing. Unless there's something out of tolerance, let's get to the meat of the committee. So
Are you
There's no-
taller?
Am I taller? There's a little heel on my shoe, I think.
From your promotion.
she's standing on a podium.
She's floating in air.
yes,
There you go.
We don't have anything out of tolerance. I just wanted to point out that the health insurance, the reports from Assured Partners may look a little different because we have changed over from that July to June year and made that conversion over to the calendar year, which matches our benefit year. So it may make the reports look a little different going forward as far as the numbers have all changed, but that's just because we're changing that year. Everything's within tolerance and you know that the health insurance is fine and there's nothing unusual that I need to point out. Workers' comp reports, you know, we started the fiscal year over again December 1, so they look kind of blank, but that's just because we're restarting the new year. I did want to bring up while we're on this section, I sent everyone a quick email this morning letting you guys know about the Department of Labor and Illinois OSHA releasing their rule regarding a vaccine mandate. In the email, it does let you guys know that we have until February 24th to adopt a policy. We have a policy draft that's been started and the state's attorney is looking at that to make sure we're completely in compliance, that will require vaccination or testing for all of our staff. And we have to have that policy in place February 24th, and then we have until March 25th to begin those testing protocols. Michelle, did you have anything you wanted to add?
She is tall. Good morning. Michelle Neerman from the State's Attorney's Office. As Jamie mentioned, she sent around a quick link to the Illinois Department of Labor website that has a nice little chart of the very basic requirements under this new rule. For those of you at the meeting, I handed out a copy of that chart. I do want to alert you that we do recommend that this
Here,
committee.
was Drew coming?
Drew's supposed to be.
Cayos, could you mute, please?
I do want to recommend that this committee meet the last week of January to review a draft policy so that can move through the committee process, go to executive committee, and then be passed by the county board on February 8th before the deadline to institute a policy. As Jamie mentioned, we have to have a policy in place to cover county employees prior to February 24th. We need to collect vaccination data from all employees prior to that time. And then we need to start masking requirements on February 24th as well. You'll see some additional requirements in that table I passed out. I'd be happy to go over any questions you might have, or we can discuss further at the special meeting.
Is there a reason to not just plow through this now? Why a special meeting?
We do not have the policy drafted for you. This rule came out last Friday.
Okay, so it's just
Um,
timing.
It's just timing.
Okay, so
I
and
will
what-
alert you that the U.S. Supreme Court took arguments on the federal rule, heard arguments last Friday as well. We're also waiting to see if that has any impact on the state rule.
What date are you suggesting the special meeting?
If you are available, we would suggest any time that last week in January.
Does anybody on the committee have a preferred date or time? Can we pull up a calendar that shows us what's on that?
Is there a day called never?
Yeah, I know that. Blair, can you pull up a calendar that we can all see that week? Like go to the county calendar and show us what's on that week? Can we just do it after another meeting, or do we have to?
How about Wednesday, the 26th after finance?
Mavis, that's a great suggestion. Does that,
That works great for Lewis.
okay, let's,
10 o'clock on the 26th?
can we make that happen? You've got it. Mavis, thank you.
You're so welcome. Do I get
Mo,
a
is that
vote
okay
for
with you?
Yeah, it's fine.
And Michelle, are we okay to zoom in for that for most of?
Oh, yes, absolutely. With
Okay.
the emergency orders are still in place, so you can still conduct meetings remotely. You just need one person here at the meeting.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Okay.
And will you get that to us ahead of time, though?
Yes, what Jamie and Jamie Lobrillo and I will work on that this week and then try to circulate that by next week so you can take a look at it next week after Monday's a holiday, but you will have a few days to look at that before the meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Question,
And
please?
I do want to note that the Department of Labor, the Federal Department of Labor has issued some templates. So we are going to be basing our policy on one of those federal templates.
Okay, and if I could just make a suggestion, actually, this is Blair's suggestion, honestly, that finance usually runs just a little bit long. So instead of saying that we're going to start sharp at 10 o'clock or 10:30, I mean, if we can, I mean, let's schedule it for 10:30.
Just say after finance, Mike.
Yeah, well, no, they have to list it on the calendar, so,
All righty.
so why don't we say 10:30, and this way we're not jammed right up against.
Okay.
Will that work or no?
It's great.
Okay. Michelle, anything else on that? And thank you for, Michelle just got back from vacation, and I know that I personally have loaded her inbox, and I can't imagine what you're, welcome back. There's 712 emails you have to go through, and thank you
All
for,
in a day's work.
thank you for juggling everything that you're doing. So,
No
Question,
problem.
please, Mr. Chairman?
yes, ma'am.
And Michelle,
State your name, please.
Mavis Bates, with a mandate like this, will we be including vaccination opportunities? Or is that's just a separate item?
So under the emergency rule, in essence, you require that everyone be vaccinated, all employees be vaccinated, or be subject to weekly testing. There is an exemption if you have, within 90 days, you've tested positive for COVID From the 90th, you are exempt from testing 90 days after a positive test. If you have not been vaccinated, in addition, you have to be masked at all times during the workday, unless you, are in a separate workplace. If you're going to be in a vehicle with someone, you have to have a mask on. There are different types of requirements that have to be in place if you are not fully vaccinated.
And Michelle, if I can tag on to that, it is my understanding that there are two tests out there, and I'll just call them the rapid test and the lab test. Does this mandate either one of those specifically? Is the rapid test acceptable?
It appears that it would be. It basically has to be FDA approved, or it has to have an emergency use authorization. So both kinds of tests are acceptable, it appears, under the rule. The catch here is that it has to be a supervised test. So you can have an employee self-administer a test, but it has to be either watched by an agent of the employer or a telehealth proctor.
So I'm going to make the large assumption on that then, that either Human Services or the Health Department will make available somebody, whether that's via Zoom or a special little room that we set up, to go ahead and facilitate that. As Jamie looks at me like a deer in the headlight.
Those will all be details that the county board, this committee and the county board will need to work out.
I would suggest strongly that this chairman will push that person or availability is negotiated between the two departments. And we have a plan in place to do that. My fear on this is that those test kits are virtually non-existent right now. And this is great for them to say, you will do this or else. But if the test kits aren't available, what does the or else mean? And while we're a governmental body that might be able to flex some muscle on that, what does the average employer do?
You would send them to a testing facility, or you would have someone in-house to do it.
I just,
It
if
is,
the kits aren't available, they're not available. And that's what it's going to be up against. So,
Right.
For
so
what it
we
is.
have till March 25th
Shirley.
to implement the testing. So you have some lead time to try to acquire tests, or to set up a contract for testing, or just simply you're mandating people to go to testing facilities, and then the employee will be responsible for getting that test
Understood.
and submitting proof to the employer.
Okay.
So there are different policy directions you could take. It's up to the board.
No problem. And Jamie, my feelings are clear. So, okay. Michelle, thank you.
welcome.
Jamie, in terms of the reports for this month, things are a little bit different, a little bit skewed, because this is the first month of the year, which is bad enough. There's not a lot of data from December, but even more importantly, we just hit our stretch cycle, which is going to make it look even more off. So anybody that's reviewing the reports, yeah, just hang on. They'll even out by February, March, but January is going to look dramatically not normal. Is that, how's that for a layman's description?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, perfect. Any questions on that at all? Excuse me. All right, and Jamie, while you're there at the podium, I do not see on the agenda the RFP that goes with a bunch of these reports for that vendor. Does that need to be brought through this committee?
No, it does not need, it's actually does not need to be brought through committee. The RFP is being handled by purchasing.
Okay. So just, if I may comment then, under this report section, we use a vendor called Assured Partners, and we all know and love them by Michael Baker's team. And what was Assured Partners before it?
Group alternatives.
Group Alternatives. Group Alternatives was bought out by a larger carrier, which for us, how lucky, because it gives us so much more body of, depth of body and services available to us at virtually the same cost that we were paying before. But his contract is up, and because it's $8,000 a month or $10,000, or $100,000 a year. It's greater than the $30,000 limit that requires an RFP to go out. We are in the midst of this giant, four-pronged attack to revamp how we handle our own health insurance. And Mike's team is integral to that. But I concede that, purchasing and Joe Onsick and everybody else are correct. This needs to go out to RFP, and that process has begun. Hopefully we'll get the best of the best out of that. So, but we have that in the works and it is going now.
Yep, we're just completing drafting it with purchasing and they'll get that released soon.
Perfect. Okay.
Mr. Sir, just
Madam
have a
Chair,
question, just to
welcome.
follow up on that. Thank you. Good to be here. So when we develop these contracts with trusted partners and companies that we have a very positive working relationship with, do we do an automatic extension review in the contract? And if so, how long can we continue that on? Because the case.
Madam Chair, if we can, we do need to get to executive session, and I have comments on this that I would love to make, but they would best be served there.
Wonderful. Okay.
If that's okay
Oh,
with you.
Perfect.
Okay, great. All right, Jamie, why don't you take us into compliance then?
This is simply the monthly sexual harassment training report. So this, again,
Was that
resets.
due by the end of December?
And we completed in December. So we're starting again in January. So everybody will need to do the training again for 2022. So the report, the numbers have dropped because we actually have, I think it's 70 some people who've already done it for 2022. So the first reminder emails have gone out and we're asking employees to complete that by the end of August so that we have plenty of time to follow up on any gaps.
We just change the date on the form and just resend. I'm joking. I'm totally joking. I'm gonna have to take it twice and I should just take it now. So, okay, Jamie, thank you so much. How did we do ultimately?
We did well. Yes, we did very well.
We did better than last year in shorter time.
Absolutely. Yes. Hands down.
Would you say that the staff is that our employee force is getting used to the electronic version of education and stuff like that? Is it becoming more accepted or?
I think I think for staff, particularly the staff that work on site, the technology worked well. It's when you're on a remote workstation
That you're not.
that the
VPN.
automatic
Yeah.
recording of taking it doesn't necessarily work the way it's supposed to. So, but I think everybody's kind of adjusted to it because we did follow up on an individual basis with those who had not taken it. And I think now it's much more
my-
accepted as a requirement this year.
My gut comment would be, let's work on that, but given the cyber and getting in and, the multi-step authentication, let's not add fuel to an already, burning fire on that. So.
It works very well 95% of the time.
Perfect, well
So
within tolerance.
absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Bates,
there's a question from Mr. Brown.
I see that. That's where I'm going next. Jamie, if
Okay.
we're done with compliance, there is a question. Blair, can you put that up on the screen and maybe Michelle can take a look at it?
I could, Mr. Chair, if it's okay, I'll just jump in. I didn't want to interrupt.
Dave, go ahead. Michelle,
this is-
Dave Brown has a question that he texted in or whatever.
Yeah, this is
chatted.
Brown speaking. Michelle, I'm assuming there'll be some clarification unless you can already say what it is. And when we create the policy for vaccination in order to be employed, what is the definition of vaccination? Is it just the 1 or 2 shots that CDC has identified? Or does it include boosters as they come up with new booster requirements
It currently
or
is just,
suggestions?
it's currently the 2-shot dose to be fully vaccinated. There's no booster requirement at this time.
Really?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope they change that.
Really? Okay. Dave, thank you for the question and I'm sorry, but Blair tapped me on the shoulder to say, look at the chat and I was not viewing that. So I apologize.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, let's get into the new old business, the new lobby ordinance. Vincent, how are you, my friend? Happy New Year.
Very good. Thank you. Vincent Coyle from the State's Attorney's Office. I did receive some feedback from Mo Iqbal, and I thank thank him for all those edits. I did incorporate that, and I believe that was attached. So this committee does have the most up-to-date version. However, there is one issue that I am still researching that Iqbal brought up to me that I think he was looking to incorporate into the ordinance, and that is an issue regarding when someone leaves the county, whether there's a cool down period before they can register as a lobbyist here in Kane County. So that is something that I am still looking into. I also am open to any other feedback this committee has, whether they want to reach out to me after or whatever, but I encourage any thoughts or feedback that they may have regarding this.
So Vince, I say this at risk of sounding like an idiot, so let me just dive into it. We delayed this enormously because of other projects and then pulled it to the plate. And she's now been percolating for quite some time. And it's time to say, we need a deadline to get this done. We can't keep adding to the scope and doing this. So if this is the final question, I would love to begin beating this to death. But what I'm hearing you say is, this is the last hurdle. You don't know if there's an answer to that yet, and you're researching it. And by the time we get to next month, we can draw a line in the sand and move it from this committee once and for all. Is that
Yes.
fair?
That is very fair. Yes.
Okay. Madam Chair, you sat up.
A question and then my thought on this. Is it the state legislature requires 1 year that you cannot be a lobbyist?
That's what Mo Iqbal had indicated as a cool down period, and I just need to research that one issue.
May I suggest 6 months? I'll just put 6 months on the table.
Okay, I will take a look at that.
It seems a moderate amount, appropriate amount for somebody to leave and transition to a new position, which is a lobbyist, and then begin.
Okay, I will take a look. Thank you.
So just so I'm understanding this, on the one side of the coin, are we worried that somebody might have inside information, and once they leave, that they might have information that other people don't have, and that's the concern? Are we worried that, I'm not understanding, I get the cool down period, yet I don't. I'm trying to understand what the rationale is, whether it's 30 days, 6 months, or a year. What's the rationale? If somebody decided not to run for office or ran for office and lost, but was approached by, who are we to limit that? On the other hand, there might be a perfectly valid reason to do that I'm just isn't within my grasp right now.
That was a recommendation that I am looking into. I didn't see anything specifically in the Lobby Registration Act that requires that.
Mo, can you chime in and give me what's your, I mean, it sounds like a perfectly normal thing to do, but why?
Well, this is something that has been debated in the Springfield. There's a revolving door. One day the state rep is in the House, and the second day he's the lobbyist, and he knows the workings of the committees, and he knows how to get the work, how to get his message through. So we are very, very small, but it did happen. I'm sure, Mr. Chairman, you recall 2 years ago when we had an issue with the Forest Preserve lease or whatever. And things do happen. So there has to be some cool off period. If I go off the board and second day I'm calling everyone, I know how to work the system. I don't think it's fair.
So what's the difference between somebody getting paid as a consultant and being a lobbyist? Is there a distinction there?
Yeah, lobbyist is the person who gets paid.
What's
He
a
is
consultant?
not a political activist. He's the employee of somebody.
A consultant gets paid too. That's
Please.
Mr. Iqbal, excuse me. A lobbyist will benefit a company, and the company will do, in my understanding, will do business with the government body. So they're lobbying for the contract, they're lobbying for an issue. So that would be the lobbyist to seek benefit from that governmental agency to approve with water reclamation, let's just say. No, a company is going to.
Mr. Chairman, Jepro?
But if I may.
Yeah, Madam
I'm
Chair.
sorry,
Right now.
But both the lobbyist as well as a consultant who does a numerous amount of different things, consultants are specialists in a field, they all get paid. So that's not the differentiation. It's benefiting from legislation that may benefit a company.
Yeah, so Vince, you understand what I'm saying. What's special about the word lobbyist versus consultant? And you don't have to answer on the fly. I'm just saying.
Sure. No,
That's my concern.
my answer would be, it depends on what the consultant is actually doing. So in our ordinance that I drafted, there is a definition of lobbying. So if the consultant is doing any of those functions,
Okay.
then they would have to also be part of the registration. But if they are not, excuse me, then they wouldn't fall under that. So it is defined in the ordinance. So I would look to that to determine whether whoever it is, the consultant or any entity, whether they are participating in any of those actions.
Okay. And fellow commissioners and committee members, Mr. Shepro, I'm going to refrain from additional comments on this. Jamie, if we can put an email out to the board on this saying, this is coming through Human Services. If you have a question, please contact the Chair of Human Services. Don't reply all. And let us know, but but you know what, let's not, because otherwise this will spend the next 8 months ping-ponging, you know, and if somebody has a very firm feeling on something, let's have it before the Iqbal Vince deadline of next meeting to move this out of here. Is that fair? Mo, do you have any problem with that? I don't mean to characterize it like
No,
that. but-
definitely not. If you want to move it through today, you can do it. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's up to the committee, but if they want to put it.
I'm just going off of what Vince said, stall it, but for one, he's got a little bit more to do.
That was just the one recommendation, the one issue that I want to resolve, if that's going to be incorporated.
Clean it up for next time, and then we're coming at you if you don't have it. How's that? Okay, fair enough.
Right.
Fair enough. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, just one comment, please, Bates.
Yes, Ms. Bates.
I believe the whole issue is conflict of interest and insider information. So this has been a standard procedure, I believe, in Springfield for a long time. It's a year of, I like this term, cooling off period. It's so that I can't be a board member and maybe get promised by the oil industry to buy me a fancy car if when I go out of here, I help them. It's just bad practice.
Ms. Bates, I might suggest that if you quit being a board person here and don't have a job and are looking for your paycheck, who are we to restrict you from doing that? Would be my retort. And I don't know that we have that ability. And if somebody would like to pay you to continue for your silence, to not share anything, you're welcome to do that. But we get into all sorts of hairy issues on this, and I'm not advocating one side or the other. I just want to come up with something that's fair and appropriate, and we can move it out of committee. That's my goal.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm not debating you in any way, shape, or form, but I have heard both sides of this debate, and I have not chimed in any way, shape, or Vince and Mo will tell you, I have not tried to steer this in any direction whatsoever, and I've been patient, but we need to move on with this. So,
Okay, moving on.
good. Okay,
Yep.
thanks, and Mavis, thank you.
Okay.
Business analysis update, Jamie.
I just wanted to give a quick update. We are still moving forward on the business analysis. We have an RFP out for a consultant to assist with that process as far as pointing jobs and looking at our organizational charts. I included the organizational charts and just a quick statement in the packet. We will do the
When you say
administration.
quick, you mean like insomnia reading? You kidding me?
We
Yeah.
are going to work to do the administrative work to make these org charts consistent and everything like that as we go forward. But I just wanted to share them at this stage in case there were any questions on it as we're moving forward. There's still a few weeks left that the RFP will be open, and then We will be choosing a vendor, and then we do have job descriptions for every job that is on one of these org charts.
Perfect.
So we will be streamlining those again for consistency.
And again, the business report, in my opinion, is what is the charter of the department that, what is the mandate that they're supposed to be doing? What does their org chart look like? What does their personnel do? And then how do we pay them versus other places? Have we been consistent with that the whole time?
Absolutely. And we're just looking to make a consistency across the county so that jobs with similar duties and responsibility levels are paid at a similar level across different departments.
And again, as chair, I would like to just thank, I believe we have everybody's participation except for two departments, which was education and
The recorder.
the recorder's office. The recorder's office is a relatively small office. But does a Herculean task. But it's a relatively small office, very concentrated. And I have not looked at the education department yet, but they've chose to opt out. Everybody else has wonderfully participated and it's so appreciated. So.
Yes, and they have been very cooperative and provided information and met the deadlines and everything. So they've been extremely helpful and worked well with us.
And for transparency's sake, does that RFP come through committee or purchasing and just goes out?
Purchasing already has put the RFP out. When we get everybody together, we have a group that will be reviewing those vendors. That contract will then, after we choose, will come through committee.
Okay, so again, for transparency's sake, when an RFP is created, if the committee isn't giving input as to what should be on that RFP, who gives that? Who does that?
I wrote the RFP with purchasing's help.
You smart aleck.
Well, you asked.
Stepped right into that, didn't I? But I mean, should a committee be looking at what their RFP is, or is that not the way it's done? And I'm okay either way. Lots of stuff said lately. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
I believe it's a staff role to write that.
That's a wonderful way to say it. It is not an electorate role, it is a staff role.
That's my understanding, yes.
Perfect. Ms. Labrillo, thank you. Moving on to item C, resolution amending the tuition reimbursement policy in the personnel policy handbook. Before we get into that, as a reminder, we have discriminated between tuition reimbursement and continuing education. Is that statement fundamentally sound?
Yes, we have made an effort to define in the policy the difference between tuition, as far as tuition reimbursement, and training.
And with that, we are only focusing on one of those in this conversation. Unfortunately, at the last meeting, when we started this conversation, there was some IRS definition that caused us to stumble. Is that correct? We were talking reimbursement and it used the word tuition or something along those lines. We were better defining that for today.
I believe we were fine with the language that was in it at the end of the last committee, because it is language direct from the IRS.
I was under the assumption, Michelle, your group was adding just a little burb to further clarify beyond.
I think the blurb that we were adding was, there was some questions around making sure that the board had made their statement as to what the purpose of this was. So Mr. Davis had suggested that we make clear for future boards what we're trying to accomplish with this policy. And we were asked to add a little blurb into the introduction. If you go to page 80 in the packet, I have highlighted that statement. This would be the only change from last time.
Jamie, can you coach us through where that IRS definition was?
The IRS definition is below where it says definitions, and it's qualifying educational tuition.
That was the blurb that I don't see in here. So
It's there.
this is tuition reimbursement, and we were trying to discriminate between education and training.
Right, so you see qualified educational tuition, so that's your tuition. And then below, non-qualifying work-related education.
Are you on page 80?
Yes,
Mavis, it's on screen if you can see it. Blair, can they see that? Okay.
Oh,
Mavis, do you
okay.
see that?
Yeah, now I see it.
Okay.
those are the definitions. And if you see in the top of the paragraph, it does say pursuant to section 127 of the Internal Revenue Code. So that's the
Yep.
reference. So there was a little talk about, do we need to make sure we reference that this is from the Internal Revenue Code, and that reference is at the end of the first paragraph up there.
So tuition reimbursement, did that IRS code call this? What was the definition in the IRS code? Did they call it continuing education?
That's, yes, those are the terms they use.
Right, so we wanted to make sure that we were supplementing to the IRS code that in this instance, the continuing education means tuition reimbursement. Am I the only one who's recalling this?
I'm not sure, Cliff. Say it again.
So this portion deals specifically with tuition reimbursement,
Okay,
and the IRS code in the 127 used the word education instead of tuition reimbursement. And we were making sure that whatever the language in code 127 didn't make this mushy compared to the second conversation on this, which was training. Has that been, are we satisfied? If you're satisfied, I'm satisfied. I'm
This
just
is-
going, those were just my notes from the last one.
Right, and we discussed it, and then since it was the language and terms used in the IRS code, my understanding was we were okay with it, that's why we chose those
Okay.
terms, and that we wanted to stay consistent with the IRS code. Because that's how the IRS will treat it regardless of what we call it. So we want to make sure that's clear for everyone, because when it comes time for taxes to be paid and payments to be reported, what the IRS defines it as is what they will use.
Okay.
So we wanted to stay consistent.
I think we've spent an incredible amount of time on this, ping-ponging this back and forth, and I would love to move this to the next committee for their review. So in that notion, Mr. Kenyon,
Yes.
could I get a motion to move the resolution amending the tuition reimbursement policy in the personnel policy handbook?
So moved.
Looking for a second.
Lewis, second.
Lewis seconds. Any discussion on this?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mo Iqbal.
Yes, sir.
The only
Look very
thing
dapper
I-
this morning, Mo.
Okay, I will offer only a suggestion here on the word. I understand what qualified under IRS means and so forth, but for an employee who is reading this policy, I think he or she should be told that qualified means that it will be considered his or her income, and they may have to pay the income tax on it. That's the difference between qualified or non-qualified, whatever it means. I think it's in those terms, I think the employee should be told.
Do we,
Everything under this policy is reportable if it exceeds $5,250, which is addressed later in the policy, not within the definitions. But if you scroll down in the policy, there is a statement in there that includes the tax. There it is. It's 2B.
2D,
2B.
B as in boy,
Yes.
for the employees, is intended to be excluded from employees' taxable gross income. This is up to a maximum. Mo, are you in agreement with 2B, or are you saying you're in conflict with that?
2B, what page is it on? I'm looking at.
78, it's on screen now.
I can't read the screen, but I have other screen open, which I can control better.
Okay, page 78.
78, okay.
Is this annually or lifetime, 5,250?
That's annual.
Okay,
Well, what's on my page 81 on my home screen?
Oh, okay, 81.
Mhm.
There's both the
Thanks, Anita.
resolution and the policy and policy form included in the packet, so it actually will appear twice.
B2. Is it page 81, where on the,
Under B, tuition reimbursement shall be subject to the following limitations.
okay,
And then number 2, B as in boy.
there are 2A and 2B.
Yes.
And then 2B. Okay, as long as it's, yeah, I agree, that's fine.
Okay.
So this is 2A and 2B are a little bit conflicting.
Because Jamie, 2A says not to exceed $2,400 on an annual fiscal year, on any fiscal year.
Right.
And
that's
2B says up to $5,250.
Right. 2A would be our policy maximum, which we have established to make sure that we don't run out the money too fast and there's money available for everyone interested in applying for it. 2B refers specifically to the tax law limitation. So the first
Okay.
2A is our policy limit.
I
And then
get
2B
it.
is the
Thank you.
IRS limit.
Okay, never mind. I get
So
it.
if I'm happy to ask this
Yeah.
question, if anybody's thinking it, since we've never exhausted the $50,000 a year from the riverboat for this, why don't we just line those two up and we can adjust it later if we need to, Madam
Huh.
Chair?
Remember, we've got something else that we're talking about as well, which is allowing a small amount of money to help pay for student loans out of that 50,000. So can we, otherwise I would agree with you, but if someone coming into work and has student loans, we're going to help subsidize that by what, 250, we were talking about 500 annually.
I've never heard that before. Has any?
It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda for today.
Oh, sorry.
But again, I think no, we haven't even come remotely close to exhausting this money before. So
We've, I'm not going to say.
here's
we've
the
been
deal.
close, but I think
Let's move
as-
it to the next group.
Okay.
So if we could call the vote.
Allen. Bates,
Bates, yes.
Davis. Iqbal,
Iqbal, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Louis, yes.
Sturgis.
Sturgis, yes.
Yep.
Congratulations, folks. Item C, training policy draft attached.
This is just a draft. It's not being put forward as a resolution yet. It's just a draft that I wrote, but I want to make sure that if the committee has input, I get that because this isn't an amendment from an existing policy. It's actually brand new policy. We have not previously had a policy for training before. So I was just looking for some feedback.
Is this the second leg of the first discussion?
Yes. So then as
So
we
give us a 10,000-foot view of what the goal is on this.
The goal on this is to just add some oversight to the use of training funds through human resources. So this.
An
would-
example of training might be,
An example of training might be an IT staff person and they've got a new software coming in and they want to send a few staff people out to training to learn how to use that new software the county's getting.
so it's not a degree type program as we just passed out of this committee. This is the second leg of that and how we might assist our people within that.
Correct. This is specifically for training for their current job that makes them able to do their current job better or add a new skill to their current job, as opposed to giving them training that can be applied to other positions.
So what we're looking for today is for everybody to just be aware of it, regurgitate it, take a look at it, digest it. And at the next meeting, we'll begin some meaningful conversation. And with the goal of within 2 meetings, have this passed out of committee.
Correct. If anyone has any comments, things they'd like added, to please send that out. We'll be sending it out to department heads as well to review for their comments. Make sure we get feedback from everyone. And then we will provide a draft that's available for vote in the next meeting.
For those of you that have been in the committee for a couple of years, understand that this is the opposite of the Mark Davis, Cliff Sturgis attempt to rewrite an entire booklet. And we broke it down to very small bite sizes. this is the next bite on this. And so let's approach it from that perspective. And I look forward to whatever input you have, feel free to get it to Jamie and myself, and we'll get it all correlated for the next meeting. Okay, any questions on that at all?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, just a short question. What page is this thing is on? Is it 84? It's not 84.
83.
83, okay. Thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Mo. Okay, student loan repayment assistance.
This was just an idea that came about when we were looking at tuition reimbursement policies that other counties have. And it was something McHenry County is doing that we just wanted to get the committee's feedback on if they would like to pursue this.
In Lake County.
In Lake County.
We'll go around the room on this. Let's start with Anita.
Can you describe it first, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Gosh darn, I'm so sorry. Jamie?
What the other counties are currently doing is offering a small amount of money, somewhere around $250 for employees who have student loans that they already have in place, either at the time they were hired or that they acquired while they were working here, but their own student loans, and paying annually an amount towards that student loans just to assist our employees with repayment. That payment, if it was $250, it may not sound like much, but it may be an entire month's payment for a student that is trying to pay back the loans they have acquired to acquire the skills that they have to work with the county.
So would it be, so this is just like the other, the training policy that was just prior to this. We're not looking for any action today. We're just introducing it. If anybody has strong feelings, comments, concerns, I view this, I'm very, I'll put my bias on this a little bit. I am very much against this on one perspective. On the other perspective, I look at it from a human services and the acquisition cost to bring somebody on, and it's a great tool to have. So I'm kind of torn on this one. And, you know, is $250 significant, or is it a token? The token might be all we need if we're, you know, if somebody's looking at working for us or someplace else. So everybody just keep an open mind and take a look at it and see what you might think. Send any comments or concerns to us so that we can draft this for next committee. And have some meaningful dialogue and try and take some action on this. Where would these funds be coming from, Jamie?
That would be something the committee would have to discuss. We really don't know at what level our staff would be utilizing this. So we have to take that into consideration and come up with, you know, a general estimate of how many employees we think might be accessing this program.
I'm so sorry. I was under the assumption that based on prior conversations, that this would equally be coming from those riverboat funds.
It
Am
would
I mistaken
qualify
on
to
that?
come for riverboat funds if the board wanted to approve
that-
that use of the riverboat
Okay.
funds. It does qualify for riverboat
Okay.
funds.
Out of that $50,000 for education.
Okay, because that makes, thank you, Madam Chair, because that makes a huge difference to me. If that was coming from public funds, I would be very much against it. If that's coming from the riverboat funds, you know, let's keep talking. So, but again, that's just me, and I want to acknowledge my bias on it, but
And,
Comment, Lewis?
oh, sure.
Anita, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to weigh in. I think it's great. So many of our younger people and even our older people, they have student loans sitting out there. And it's not a huge amount of money, but it just says that we are, backing your education and we understand. And like somebody said, it could be a whole month or it could even be 2 months of a payment for some people. So I think it's a inexpensive cost. Well, there'll be no cost to that county, but it's inexpensive use of the riverboat and to have. So,
Anita, thank you so
please.
much. Go ahead, Mavis.
So is this going to be for existing employees also?
Yes, it
Or
would
is
for
this a
all
hiring-
active employees.
Is this hiring or all retention?
I
It's
don't know
both.
how you discriminate and say, here, we're going to use it as a tool for acquisition, but then say, if you're already here, we can't do it. That's a really slippery slope.
I think it should be for existing employees also, because otherwise this is like the nurses they're bringing in these traveling nurses and giving new hires big bonuses, and It's disrespectful to your current employees, so.
Oh, I get it. And
I think
Mavis, let me just tell you that since I've already paid for my education years ago and I don't have any more loans, I perfectly expect to be able to turn mine in for my $250 reimbursement as well. If you don't understand what I'm saying. This is a slippery slope. That's sarcasm, by the way. This is a very slippery slope with the best of intentions, but may not be practical to implement. But that doesn't mean that we're not trying and we'll hold conversations on this.
I think I just figured out what you don't like about this, Cliff.
What's
Okay.
that?
I think I was wondering what you didn't like about this, and I think I just figured it out.
Yeah, that's it, because there's no tail backwards. That's fair. I mean, this could be a quagmire that we find ourselves in.
No,
You
it's
know what I
current, your current loans, not past loans. If you paid up, God bless you, good for you. But past loan, I mean, current loans,
I don't think that's fair at all.
I think it's very fair.
I don't think that's fair.
With you.
I don't think that's fair in
Cliff,
any
we'll
way,
take up a
shape or
collection
form.
for you for 250.
What's that?
I said, we can take up a collection to give you 200.
Thank you so much. So
Plus, sir, you're
welcome.
not eligible.
anyhow, it's not ours to decide today. We
Yeah.
are just
Let's move
opening,
on.
opening some conversation. So, okay, Jamie, let's get to resolution amending the Kane County financial policies to clarify use of budgetary savings resulting from vacancies. Do I have a motion to move this forward?
I'll move it.
Kenyon motions. Do I have a second?
Wait, second.
Kate second. Do we have any discussion on this? Jamie, why don't you go ahead and give us an overview?
This was sent to us from finance. It was originally brought forth in finance and they asked for human services to review it first and then send back to them. This is just meant to provide some guidance around what was an existing practice within the departments when an employee leaves and let's say the position is vacant for a time period and budgetary money remains from that point of vacancy. The department head has some authority they can exercise to utilize that salary money and also rehire the position, but the money that was saved while it was vacant can be used to pay things such as overtime for those that had to work more to make up while there was a vacancy, and it can be used to be passed on to other salaries as long as they rehire at the reduced rate, so there's no change in the overall salary budget for the department.
Does everybody understand that?
Rehire at a reduced rate so that the other people get to keep their raises that were caused by the vacancy?
Correct. So if you were to have, let's say, an experienced person leave a position and you were to rehire it at less money, then you can readjust some of that savings to provide raises to the other staff in the department, as long as the overall budget for the department does not go up.
So cynical side of your committee chair says, oh my gosh, somebody retires. Look, we have their salary. We're going to sprinkle it around and give everybody raises so they're happy and not rehire that person. But then the next year they come and go, oh my gosh, nothing's getting done because we didn't hire that person. We need to go out there, but your budget money's gone. What then? And I think the answer that I received was, hey, Mr. Elected Official, that's a staff level thing, not an elected official thing, and you shouldn't be sticking your nose in it. And I will agree with that. You know, that's past my authority and I shouldn't be sticking my nose there. But I want to give that out to the committee to say, what are your feelings on that? And again, I'm super anxious to move this from here and get this to finance unless Mr. Berman deal with it. Because really, this is his purview. We're just trying to get it out from, we just needed a genesis, and this is where we're starting from. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Bates,
this gives me a shell game feeling.
you and I were on the same page when this started, but I have been swayed. So,
You think this is a okay practice to?
I'm not there yet, but I'd be love to hear what the finance committee says. And that's where I'm at with this. And I'm not trying to kick a can down the road. It's just that I don't believe, you know, that I believe conceptually we could begin it here, but honestly, I mean, Mr. Berman's committee, I will defer to them and their guidance on this because they see the fine, we can do the, we can put this together and wrap it in the finest, wrapping paper and the prettiest bow in the world. But when it comes to the finances, we don't see those. Mr. Berman does. And I would, and that's the information I need to make my decision. So I would like to move, it forward.
Second
Ms.
thought, please. I'm wondering if we could move this forward without recommendation, which is a trick I learned from Mr. Kenyon, Mr. Shepro.
Ooh. We're in discussion on a resolution, and Madam Chair had a question. Let's go to that, and then we'll come back to Ms. Bates.
I just have a comment.
While Michelle's debating on if we have the ability to do that.
I think it was agreed. Good paying attention, Ms. Bates. Well done. But here, this is just a rhetorical comment. Our salaries are deflated. So if, let's say, a senior member of that department leaves and their adjusted salary was $70,000 a year. But in order to find somebody who's as qualified as that individual, meet those qualifications, they may come in at 72,000 because of our deflated salary. And we have to admit that, we have to be honest with that. So where does that leave that department if we say that, if that position is left open and its money is distributed out so that other individuals within that department could start elevating their salaries to a market level? We are still left in a gap if the starting salary for that new individual coming in is at 72,000, which I believe is realistic approach. And I'm just using hypothetical numbers right now.
Honestly, I'm not, this is not confrontational or disrespectful, but I'm not following that logic at all. So
we've got.
So somebody quits and you have money and you say
You've got
distribute that money to those other people to lift them,
So the
but we're
starting,
still going to have the same problem.
we're still going to have the same problem because the person who left our salaries are very low.
And Madam Chair, my comment back to that would be, we have a report and we're hiring, we have an RFP out and we
Correct.
have an initiative going to make an action before that information isn't within my character to do. We will have that and we will address this as a global issue. In my opinion, I'm just one vote. You guys can all vote the way you want to, but.
Oh, what a powerful vote.
Oh, would you stop? But so I just, if we have an issue with that, then great. Let's define the issue and define a solution. This is not a makeshift way to get around that. So I believe Ms. Bates' question was, if you give a temporary raise because of that lack of use, does that raise become permanent for the next budget cycle? I believe that's what she was asking. I could be wrong on that.
Of course.
And is that what this is intended to do? Or are we boxing ourselves in a corner? And again, I don't believe this is for us. This is for finance. And I would love to take a vote and move this out.
Well, finance did see it first and then send it to us. So it actually came from them.
You stinker, Berman, you stinker.
But I think what we're really looking at, I think is a little different than what both of you are describing. We're looking at, let's say an employee's adjusted salary was $70,000 and we can rehire that position at $55,000 if we hire an entry-level person or someone without 30 years experience. And if we do that and we have $15,000 left, that department head can provide raises to the other staff in the department as long as the overall budget for the department has not
Net
changed.
zero.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's what this resolution is addressing.
With
But
no other
to your-
questions, can we call the vote?
But wait a minute,
Oh,
hold on.
comment.
She's not done yet. Let her finish.
Right.
Because
I was going to say, to your point, we are addressing this type of issue in the business analysis where we will be having ranges established for each position based on the job duties and responsibility level of the position. So you would have a lot more confidence in your department heads making adjustments within those ranges that are already established.
Mr. Chairman,
that's what I was
Bates.
talking about.
And
I
then
think,
Lewis after.
I think with the explanation from Madam Chair and other explanations, I can see why this is this is just letting the department heads keep their budget and manage their budget however they they think is best.
That's
So-
exactly what they told me as well.
So I think I can approve of this.
Okay, Anita, you had a comment?
Yeah, I also think it gives our staff and department heads some incentive to okay, so as a 30-year employee retires and they're making it gives our department heads incentive to, look at, are these younger, newer candidates who are gonna make less, are they a good fit? And it also, sometimes in my business world, we would go, okay, Anita retired, and guess what? Because of new things coming in and computer automation and work from home situations and all those things that have evolved over the last 30 years, we don't even need that position, or maybe we only need somebody to do half of that work. But a lot of times department heads are going to go, yeah, but I'm not going to lose that money. So to have the ability to give it to other people who will then maybe be taking on a little more duties.
Absolutely agreed. And Anita, let me,
I agree.
let me make and thank you. But let me make a final comment on this, just two things. The first one is,
Like you always do.
no, no. No.
Very good. David,
First one is,
David,
I think you all realize rarely do I do one thing without there being a secondary action. This is, in my opinion, setting us up for future meetings where we might be discussing retirement buyout packages for people that may find us exactly where we're doing. And we have not introduced that to the committee yet, but that would be the 1-2 on this. So I want to acknowledge this. And secondly, I want to make sure that everybody understands any repartee that goes on here at these meetings is done with the very best of intentions. And, everybody that knows me, steel sharpens steel, and we are not meant to sit here and rubber stamp. And as long as we're respectful of each other, Madam Chair and I can agree to disagree and still go out for a cup of coffee in 10 minutes and no big deal. So I want to make sure that everybody understands the spirit of cooperation on that.
Mr. Sturgis, you are always
he's
respectful.
amazing.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Let's call that question quickly.
Where's that coffee?
Yeah, I was wondering too.
Bates,
Yes.
Davis, Iqbal,
No,
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sturgis.
Sturgis, yes. Okay, Mr. Berman, that goes to you, my friend. Okay, do we have any new business, Ms. Labrillo?
We do not.
Okay, we do have need for executive session. And Jamie, you may be staying in for part of this and being asked to leave for part of this.
Okay.
Understood? Ms.
Yes, sir.
Neerman, we would ask you to stay. And if we could, Mr. Kenyon, just motion to go into executive
I move
session.
we go into executive session.
Bates, second.
8-2. Ms.
We, pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, we need to state the reason for going into executive session. For example, if
And that
it's
reason would be?
compensation of a specific employee, if it's collective bargaining matter, if it's pending litigation.
And I believe it is all three of those, correct?
I'm not entirely sure.
It is all three of those.
Okay, then yes, then that be your motion.
Mr. Kenyon amends his motion
The motion
accordingly,
State the purpose.
Bates,
and Ms.
second.
Lewis and
Would be
Bates seconds.
compensation of a specific employee, pending litigation, collective bargaining matters.
Yes, and thank you, Michelle.
Well, Chaparral's not listening anyways.
Paul.
Allen, Bates,
Yes.
Davis, Iqbal,
yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sturgis.
Yes.
Okay.
Roll call.
Allen, Bates,
Bates here.
Davis,
We lost one.
Iqbal,
Equal here.
Kenyon,
Yes, sir.
Lewis,
Lewis here.
Sturgis,
Sturgis here.
Pirog, Shepro. You have a quorum.
He's.
Mr. Kenyon?
I'd like to make the is it time for the motion to adjourn?
It is time for your motion.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Ms. Lewis?
Second that.
There we go. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, everyone.